Hi, it's DrBiology here, and this video is on plant disease and defense responses, and it's part of the unit of infection and response, and it is found only in AQA GCSE Biology. So first of all, let's talk about plants diseases. So plants can be infected by a range of viral, bacterial and fungal pathogens, as well as by insects such as aphids. For your exam, you'll need to know about two specific plant diseases. So tobacco mosaic virus, which is caused by a virus, and rose black spot, which is caused by a fungus. Also, you need to understand about how insects damage plants as well. For the first two diseases, you can go back to my video on communicable diseases, and I go through both of those diseases, both in terms of their symptoms and their effects on plants. Okay, so detection of plant diseases. Well, first of all, you need to know what a plant disease looks like. So these are the kind of general things. They tend to have stunted growth, they have spots on leaves, they might have areas of decay such as rot. There might be growths forming on them, so for example at the base of tree trunks, malformed stems or leaves, discoloration, and maybe they have pests on them as well, like aphids. Now, how on earth do you know whether a plant has a disease? Well, usually you can tell by observation. So you might use a garden pest and disease manual. So you might use a book, or you might use a mobile phone app to recognize whether there is a certain plant disease. Secondly, you could, if for example you're a commercial grower, you can send the plant off to a laboratory, and within that laboratory they can identify the specific disease that your plants might have. And then thirdly, there are detection kits, rapid tests to detect different diseases. These use monoclonal antibodies, so you can find out about those in a previous video that I produced recently. So let's talk about plant damage by what we call ions, so ion deficiency. So again, there are certain ions that are required for the healthy growth of plants. In particular, you'll need to know about two, but in an exam question they could ask you about other types of ion deficiencies, but they would give you lots of information in the exam. So the first one is nitrate deficiency. So as you can see, there are two plants here. The one on the left has been given plenty of nitrate fertilizer. The one on the right has not been given any, and you can notice that it has stunted growth, as nitrates are used to make proteins. So without making proteins, it's going to reduce the growth rate of that plant. Second one we need to look at is magnesium deficiencies. So again, if you look at this bunch of tomato leaves here, you can see that there's a yellow mottling. So the yellowing means there's less chlorophyll, and that causes something called chlorosis. And basically magnesium is required to make chlorophyll. So if you don't have any chlorophyll, you can't have photosynthesis. Without photosynthesis, you'll also reduce the growth and development of that plant. There you go. So leaves become yellow and stunted due to a lack of photosynthesis. Plants, though, have many kind of ways of defending themselves from attack. And the three main ones are they use chemicals. So these could be substances that are given off by the plant to deter herbivory by things like insects. You've got physical adaptations, so that prevents invasion. So we'll talk about some physical methods in a minute, and also the mechanical ways, so an adaptation the plant has to stop it being eaten. So let's look at some examples. Now again, in your exam, more than likely they will give you lots of information. They might give you a picture or a diagram, and you have to work out whether they're chemical, physical or mechanical plant defenses. So the first one I'm going to talk about is chemical defenses. So some plants have antibacterial chemicals. So mint, we currently use mint in many places, such as breath fresheners. It also contains antibacterial chemicals, so it stops pathogens from destroying it. Also, witch hazel is used by humans as an antibacterial chemical, and it's from a plant, and that reduces the herbivory of that plant. Also, they might have poisons to deter herbivores. So we've talked a lot about foxgloves before. So foxgloves, they are poisonous. They contain what we call cardiac glycosides, and those can cause nausea, vomiting and stomach pain. So it's definitely going to stop insects and other animals from eating them. Can also, in humans, it can cause heart problems. There might be physical barriers as well. So, for example, a thick cell wall or a tough waxy cuticle to stop the entry of pathogens. Bark on trees. So the barks on the tree are dead cells on the stem. And basically it's a good way to stop insects like aphids actually getting into the phloem of the stem. Also, if you think about deciduous trees, each autumn they do lose their leaves. Now, obviously, they lose their leaves because of the weather change and because they need to stop photosynthesis. But obviously, another advantage is that if the leaves are suffering from any pathogens, well, they'll be removed. Mechanical adaptations. So mechanical adaptations are quite interesting, and these here's three examples. Whether you would get these three examples in your exam, I don't know, but it gives you the general idea of what we mean by mechanical adaptations. So the first one is I'll say it again, is a mimosa plant. And what happens is that if an insect or a fly lands on it to eat it, what happens is the leaves curl up or droop when they are touched. So any animal that lands on it will then fall off it, which is quite clever if you've ever seen that. It's worth checking out a video on mimosa because it's quite an amazing plant. You could also have plants that have thorns and hairs, which again deter animals or insects from eating them. If they've got hairs, that will stop aphids from actually being able to pierce the leaf to get into the phloem. And then others have mimicry. So this orchid looks like a bee, so that's going to prevent other insects from attacking it. Okay, so let's do a question checkpoint. I'm pretty sure you know what a question checkpoint is by now, but if you don't, what I'd like you to do is you're going to pause it, read it and answer it. So I'd like you to pause in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so plants need mineral ions for healthy growth. Which part of a plant takes in mineral ions? Well, that will be the roots. Leaves are usually green. What's the green substance? That is chlorophyll. And then for 2 marks, the green substance is important. Why? Well, basically because it absorbs light and it allows photosynthesis to occur. Here's the second part. So again, I'd like you to pause, read and answer in 3, 2, 1. Okay, draw one line from each mineral ion to the effect of its shortage. So magnesium, yellow leaves, nitrate is stunted growth. Okay, so again, this is we're getting to more difficult questions now. So I'd like you to pause, read and answer in 3, 2, 1. Right, so they give you lots of information. It's important to read the information, to underline things as well. And it talks about the plants were grown in 4 different growing conditions, but they don't really talk about which one is which. So it says which plant was grown with no nitrates. So that's checking that you know that nitrates stunt growth. So it will be plant A. Which plant was grown with no magnesium? Well, that's when you have yellow patches where there's no chlorophyll. So it must be D. And then give one variable that was kept constant. Okay, so obviously it wasn't the light, but what they might have kept the same is the same type of plant or the same amount of water. Okay, D, I'd like you to pause, read and answer in 3, 2, 1. So here you've got an example of phosphate and potassium ions. Now you don't need to know anything about phosphate and potassium. This question is an application question, so it's asking you to read and use the information. So it says suggest one advantage and one disadvantage of using the chicken manure pellets compared to the cow manure. So the advantage is, if you look at the table, there's more minerals in the chicken manure, but you have to buy the pellets, which are going to cost you money, whereas cow manure from your own farm is free. Okay, question 3. So I'd like you to pause, read, and answer in 3, 2, 1. Right, so some of the plants have a disease. Give 2 ways the gardener could identify the pathogen infecting the plants. Well, you could use a book or a manual, or I would imagine you could say that you could use a piece of software on a computer or app. You could also then send it to a laboratory for identification. And then the second question says, describe the appearance of plants with nitrate deficiency and magnesium deficiency. So again, nitrate, stunted growth, and magnesium, yellowing of leaves, or you could just use one word, which is chlorosis. This next question, there's a lot of data here. So I'd like you to pause, read, and answer in 3, 2, 1. So again, this is about different types of ions, and it shows you some data. And it says the gardener buys fertilizer S. Explain why they chose S. Okay, so there's 4 marks here, so you need to really look carefully at the data. So I'm going to show you the answer up above. So first of all, S does have more nitrogen, okay, more nitrate ions compared to T. It also has the highest potassium content of the 3. It's cheaper than fertilizer T as well, although, as you noticed, it has less phosphate. Now, it does say in the stem of the question at the top, phosphate ions are needed for healthy flowers and fruit. So basically, if perhaps the gardener isn't looking for healthy flowers and fruits in this case. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this video. Please do subscribe, like, and put your bell alert reminder on, please. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is the end of this series of videos on infection and response. There are many more videos to come, so I will see you soon.